All right, let's get started. So I don't have a huge plan for today. I thought we'd go over the old exams. I am available to ask questions. You guys are nearing the 90%, but there's 10 people. 10, it's not a small number, right? Raise your hand if you're one of those 10 people. No one's going to do that, right? Yeah, Matt. Is there any way to get a list of like names? No. No. There are like 1,000 reasons, Mac, why you can't get a list of UBID names of people who haven't done it, right? I mean, yeah, you could probably come up with 5 or 6 of them just in the next 30 seconds, but no. I don't even know, right? And yeah, no. There's all sorts of reasons why I don't know who does. I mean, the evaluations are anonymous. You guys know that, right? Okay, good. Well, maybe I shouldn't have told you that. What's that? Yes, every time someone submits an evaluation, I get an email with your name, exactly what you wrote about the class, right? And then how many points I want to add or remove from your final score. Right? Yeah, just kidding. They don't actually even release the results until the fall. What's that? Yeah. Oh yeah, we read the comments. Yes, carefully. Just usually grep for beer. All right, so yeah, I mean, we can go through last year's exam. Obviously, a couple of questions of this year's exam have been released on pizza, so please find them there. I'm not going to talk about those. I'm not going to both give you the questions and answer them for you, but that should give you an idea of what to expect. Yeah, Matt.
Are we allowed to work on those questions now with your friends, like develop solutions to them?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you can't. You're not allowed to bring any materials into the exam room, right? So don't show up with like a really nicely printed out solution to one of them. And there is actually another medium answer question. Like the serious students in the class will do that one rather than the one I released, just to keep it real. But I was like, why did I write 2? No one's going to do the other one. But I did write 2. So just in case you don't like that one for some reason and you want to work on another one, there's another one on the exam, which you will see on Monday. Any other questions about, you guys have seen previous exams and know what the format is. I think you guys will have plenty of time to do the exam because, again, it's a 100-minute exam in a 170-minute slot. So yeah, hopefully I think we have a fun set of long answer questions ready for you guys to dig your teeth into, etc. But again, the previous year's exam should give you an example of what to expect. So, I'm sure everyone is. I'm using this for the first time. It's nice it actually works. Okay. So let's look at the long answer questions on this particular. I think this is last year's. One of them was released early, right? So the short answer you guys are pretty familiar with. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it takes a while to get back and forth to here. All right, so the medium answer questions. Last year we didn't really distinguish between these, but why don't we just go straight to the long answer, because those were the most fun. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, and so this year the questions are going to be similar, right? So the long answer questions that I've written for this year's exam, none of them have. Let's see. Can I remember what all 3 are off the top of my head? I remember what most of them are. Yeah. They don't have right answers, right? They're not. And they're not asking you to regurgitate something that you've learned during the semester, right? They're asking you to apply some of the design principles that we've talked about to the design of new operating system, abstractions, or to solve new problems, consider the effect of new technologies on operating system designs. So they're not, they're open-ended. There are sort of right ways to approach them, and there are certain things that, like as I'm writing them, I'm thinking, oh, okay, here's what I'd be interested in people discussing, but there's definitely stuff on them that, you guys will probably come up with stuff that I haven't thought of, and that'll be great, right? So hopefully they're fun. Last year, this is kind of a similar style, right? So let's see. Last year we had, yeah, so this is a nice example, right? So this is a example of, how do I incorporate a new piece of hardware with new capabilities into an existing OS design, right? So I've got this thing called an FPGA. The FPGA has a particular set of properties. Is this a resource that operating systems should manage? If so, how? How do you provide access to it to applications, et cetera, right? How many? I mean, I'm assuming everybody has looked at these exams by now. Okay. So that's one sort of style of long answer question. Let's see. So here, this is another one looking at a new operating system principle designed to solve a particular problem, right? Race conditions between threads are pretty common. Can I reduce race conditions between threads and process address spaces by exploiting some existing VM capabilities, right? To allow them to their changes to be merged in a little bit more of a deterministic way, and then. Let's see. Okay, and then here's a solution. And then here's an example of. So here's another one where we're talking about the incorporation of a new capability into existing operating systems. And I think I can only remember 3 of the long answer questions that I wrote. Embarrassing. I don't want to say them out loud. So that's one of them. I'm tired. One of them. Oh, that's the other one. There's still one that's escaping me, but it'll come to me. Right? All right. So, any general questions? Are there exam questions that you guys want me to go over from previous years? Yeah.
The multiple choice letter J.
Multiple choice letter J from this exam?
Yes.
Ooh, the multiple choice questions. That's a bold.
Well, it talks about virtualization.
Okay. Let's see here. Multiple choice. Letter J. Which of the following is not a reason that virtualization became popular? So these are not intended to be hard. The right answer here is because in many ways virtualization took off before hardware virtualization features started to be added, right? That's not uncommon, right? I mean, software and hardware have this relationship, and in this case, people initially figured out how to do this, working around some of the sort of gross properties of, various architectures, and then those architectures started to evolve to provide more support for virtualization because it was happening, right? The other 3, wrong answers are stuff that's just taken directly from the lecture slides. Right? Those were like specific things that were on the slides that we talked about as reasons that drove hardware virtualization in the first place. Right. All right. Any other questions about exam questions? Yeah, Paul.
I don't know if you can talk about it, but the medium method that medium question that you
Mm-hmm.
released, that the that on number 7. I didn't know if you could clarify that.
Number 7?
Yeah, they did say something about in order to maintain the constraint number 7, not.
Oh, whoops. Yeah, sorry. That might be a bug. It should have been one of the constraints that was listed. It came out as 7? Oh, that's embarrassing. Anyway, I'll fix it. Sorry. Yeah, no. Well, anyway, this isn't on. Yeah, can you email the staff about that? That's a bug. It should be no. I think it's the second constraint. It's one of the constraints that we listed. It might be the first one. There's only 3, so if you use process of elimination, you should be able to figure out which one it is. But yeah, sorry. It was me trying to be clever with LaTeX and failing. Or being clever, but defeating myself with my own cleverness. Yeah, sorry about that. Any other questions about exam stuff? Any questions about anything? This is just open question hour at this point. Exam is Monday at 3:30. People were still asking about this on Piazza. Hope everyone shows up. I have no intention of giving a makeup exam, so please come. If you need an incentive, if I am forced to give you a makeup exam, I will not release any questions on the makeup exam. Yeah, Kevin.
Especially assigned 3 5
I think you answered your own question. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I was wondering, other people having this problem where we still didn't get our grade for the design document.
Where's Guru? Guru is plowing through those.
Yeah, he's doing assignment 3 first.
Yeah, he was trying to work on assignment 3 first so that we could give you a chance to resubmit those. But I have told him to go through the assignment 2 ones. So yeah, I am very confident that by a week from now, all the grading or most of it will be done. Yeah.
Somebody has submitted like this evening design doc for assignment 3. By what time can we expect it to be graded?
That I don't know. I mean, we are. So you just asked me 2 questions. Which design documents would you prefer that we grade, right? I mean, I have a finite amount of resources, so I think we're focusing on 3, right? We will get to 2, right? But at this point, that 2 ships sailed, so we're not doing those isn't going to give you guys a chance. But we are on top of the grading as much as we can be at this point. I mean, obviously, there's a lot going on the next week. But any other questions? You guys are completely ready for the final. You understand everything, Adam?
Can we look at an Inode question?
Yeah, sure. Let's look at an Inode question. Is there one on this exam? There might be. Let's see here. This is swap out. Okay. Does this count as an Inode question? Yep. So describing how to create a file, right? So I'm creating a new file. The file is not empty, so I am going to have to write some data into the file, right? I guess the answers are up there, but since they're so small that nobody can read them, what I'll do while you're squinting, like that. All right, so what's the first thing I need to do? And everyone has the solutions for this, but just, close your eyes. The first thing I need to do to create a new file, or what's one of the things I need to do? Right? Yeah, Kevin. I need an inode, right? And we talked a little bit about how file systems like ext4 actually allocate all the inodes that the file system will ever have when the file system is formatted. And just in case you care about this, you may not, we actually recently had a file system that ran out of inodes on one of our machines, which is very interesting because it confused my administrator because he said, oh, there's plenty of space left on the drive, right? Why does it say no space available? And I said, I know exactly why. It's out of inodes, right? Because it's a server that stores a lot of small files, and we hadn't allocated enough inodes. Whoops. Anyway, we've been dealing with that problem for the last couple weeks. So anyway, right. So you need an inode, right? The inode is the tip of the data structure. That's what my path maps do, right? All right. So what else do I need to do? I have my inode. Yeah. Yeah, I need to mark it as used, right? So I need to find one, allocate it, mark it in as in use. I think the first one is find an inode. Yeah, look at that. Whoop, boom. Find an inode. Ding, ding, ding. All right. Let's see.
Number 1 answer on the board.
Number 1 answer. Mark it as in use. Look at that. And initialize it appropriately, right? So inodes store metadata about the file. They have timestamps, permissions potentially stored in there as well, right? All right, what else do I need to do? I've got an inode now. Yeah.
Find the data block to go with it.
Yeah, so remember the file's not empty. So at some point I'm going to have to associate some data blocks with this file, right? This inode is the top of a data structure that's going to lead me to all the content in the file, right? So in order to do that, I need to find some data blocks, right? Which might be a separate process on the file system, and allocate them as in use, right? And ideally, remember, I want data blocks that are close to the inode. Why? Yeah.
Not reducing time between the inode and the data.
Yeah, because the inode is frequently accessed on the way to finding the data blocks, right? I mean, there's times when I might not care about the data in the file. What time? Give me an example of a file access that doesn't require actually reading the data blocks. What could I find out about a file by just looking at the inode? Yeah. Yeah, something like just looking at the created times, size. I don't need to find the data blocks for that, right? But usually, a lot of times when I get to an inode, the next place I'm going are the data blocks for the file, right? So I mark some find some, mark them as in use, hopefully mark them as in use. Hopefully they're close to the inode. Now what do I need to do? I've got an inode, I've got data blocks, I've got a file, right?
Open the data blocks for writing.
Yeah, so I need to associate the data blocks and write the content into them, right? So that's important. But there's a problem with this file. There's a problem with this hypothetical file that we've just created. It's missing something. Yeah.
Create a hierarchy so that it has a reference to the inode.
It needs a name, our file, our new file. We haven't chosen its name yet, right? They have books of, new file names for you to choose from, and depend on whether it's a boy or a girl. So anyway, I mean, you need a file name, right? I mean, otherwise you're not going to be able to find the file, and the file is just going to be off somewhere, right? You could, okay, but here's a good question. I mean, once I have an inode, can I locate the file, even if it doesn't have a name? It's got an inode number, right? But that's not usually the way you guys open files. So that would probably make you sad if I took your file system and replaced it with just numbers for every file, right? I don't know, maybe some of you guys know all your inode numbers. I doubt it.
Like 5 folders, so
What's
not
that?
really a problem.
What's that?
I only use like 5 folders.
5 folders? Yeah, those inode numbers are probably pretty long. They're like telephone numbers, right? So I've got to add an entry into the file for the appropriate directory, right? So let's say I have /path/foo, /path/2/foo. That's my path name. /path/2/foo. Where, and foo is my new file, where does the inode number for foo get added? What directory? 2, right? I need to add it into the parent directory, right? The parent directory needs to map that last net path name component to the inode number, right? That's how I can locate the file. It's a good question to go through. Any questions about this one? Yeah, Paul.
Can you talk about how the locking works?
No. Yeah, I'm not going to ask about that, right? I mean, there are clearly, unfortunately, because you guys didn't have a chance to do assignment 4, you didn't get exposed to some of this stuff, but there are clearly synchronization issues I have to deal with here, right? If I, for example, this gets particularly, so okay, well what could cause a problem here, right? There's clearly a bunch of steps that need to be performed. In what case could I run into a problem somewhere along the way? Yeah.
Files with the same name.
Yeah, like 2 people open or try to create a file with the same name at the same time, right? What bad thing could happen in that case, depending on how I synchronize these things and where I fail? What do I really not want to happen?
You could like lose the data from one of the writes.
Well, I'm probably not going to be able to preserve. I mean, the problem is if both of these opens that are trying to create a file are taking place at the same time, one of them needs to win, right? And the other one needs to fail, right? If I'm opening that in a mode that specifies that the file should not exist when I open it, right? So this is even before I get to writes, right? I'm just doing open. But what could happen? If I did this in a sloppy way, right, and I wasn't careful about cleaning up, what could happen at the end of this?
You could accidentally put the inode numbers in the wrong place when you're doing step 5.
Well, so the thing is, at some point, one of these guys is going to win and get to step 5 and actually write their inode number into the directory, right? So at the end of the day, the directory will hopefully have one new entry for path to foo, right? But again, if I don't fail very gracefully here, what could I leak? Yeah.
Would you have the inode that gets written pointing to the file that doesn't get written?
Oh, weird. I don't think so, because the data blocks would be separate, right? So those operations are separate. The place where these 2 opens are really colliding, right, is here, step 5, right? Up until step 5, they can proceed completely independent, right? Step 5 is where I need some sort of serialization to make sure that the 2 concurrent opens happen safely, right? So let's say that one open fails at step 5. What do I need to make sure I do before I complete failing that open? Yeah.
Read over that one.
Yeah, I got to free all this stuff I just allocated, right? Otherwise, I have an inode that I've leaked, and I have data blocks that I've leaked that aren't linked to the file system hierarchy in any way, right? Which means that there's no way they're ever going to be found, and there's no way they're ever going to be deleted, right? So that's a problem. So I just need to make sure I do cleanup here. But yeah, I won't. There are no sort of complex file locking questions on the exam because we haven't really talked about all the synchronization issues with file systems, which you could do for like 2 weeks, essentially. There's some pretty gnarly things that go on. All right. Any other questions? Should we go through the next one of these bad boys? Memory management trade-offs. Right, so there isn't the short answer this year. Last year we moved a little bit more slowly, so there was more memory management stuff after the midterm. This year, because the midterm was later and we were going a little bit more rapidly, we didn't do much memory management after the midterm. I think there was like one lecture on page replacement algorithms. I think that was it. So these old exams will have more memory management in the short and medium answer questions than this year's do. This year's I don't know if it has any memory management in those areas. So let's not talk about this. Software managed TLBs, same problem. Amdahl's law, something worth knowing for the exam. Yeah.
Will you have multiple different lines of wording?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, I think we accepted several different definitions for this. The formal one and the more colloquial definition. But, I mean, first of all, none of these questions are on this year's exam, clearly, right? That's one of the fun of writing exams year after year. It gets harder every year. You have to start asking about more and more random, arcane stuff. Because you used up all the, no, I'm just kidding. The questions this year I think are pretty fair, but you know, I don't reuse questions from previous exams. Any other questions about exam stuff? Yeah.
Are there midterm questions, like the syllabus covered before midterm? Will there be any questions?
Right, so I don't know if I was as clear about this in class as I wanted to be, but the way the final is structured, and this is on the released questions, the cover sheet, is that the multiple choice, short, and medium answer questions are drawn from the second half material, almost exclusively. I'm not stating that categorically. I may have messed up and put one in there that isn't, but my intention was to write those about the second half material. So file systems, virtualization, you know, the extra things that we covered, performance improvement, kernel structure, stuff like that, right? The long answer questions, anything's fair game, right? And those really try to integrate material from across the entire semester, right? So that is how the exam is structured. Again, I think I may have said contradictory things about that, but that's what I just said is what I meant, right? So and again, I'm not making any promises. There might have been one that snuck in there, but I'm pretty sure that the short and medium and multiple choice, even the multiple choice questions, focus, when they're not jokes, they focus on stuff that, actually even the jokes focus on things that happen in the second semester. So. All right, any other questions? Let's go through another, let's see, go through another problem. Classically virtualizable instructions, right? This year, because we did cover Zen, please be prepared to know something about the differences between para-virtualization and full hardware virtualization. Again, this is not at the level of detail required to understand the full Zen paper, but at least understand the differences in the approaches, right? And you know what motivated them. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we look at? I wish these didn't have the. Right, but look at one of the long answer questions, and I can sort of give you guys a sense of how to approach it. Which one is on here? Right, okay. So this one is, I'll pick on one that's a little bit easier. Not that one. Here we go, not that one. All right, so hybrid disk drives, right? I like this question so much that I wanted to reuse it this year. I actually started writing it up in my notes document, and I was like, oh, it's such a cool question, you know. It's like a nice, you know, way of integrating a new piece of technology into the existing storage stack, and then I went back, I was like, oh, crap. I asked that one last year. Right. So anyway, this is one I thought about for this year. So the idea is, we've talked about how file systems work on spinning drives, right? We didn't talk much at all, really, about Flash. But this question introduces, a short, includes a short introduction to Flash. Right? And that the big things to know about Flash that I think this table tried to summarize were that it's more expensive, right, which we talked about in class. So here's the price per gigabyte, which is about an order of magnitude more expensive. This was last year, so it's probably gone down a little bit. But look at the random access time difference, right? 100 microseconds for Flash, 10 milliseconds for an HDD, right? So 2 orders of magnitude faster random access times. But here's the interesting thing, right? The data transfer rate is pretty similar. So once you find the data on the drive, you can get it back to the system at roughly the same rate, right? The big differences here are, A, Flash is much more expensive, so you don't expect to see as much of it. And if you're trying to create a drive of the type that we'll talk about, you might want to use both technologies. But Flash provides much, much faster random access, right? So we talk about hybrid drives, right? And these exist. Does anyone have one? Yeah, OK. I don't have one. I just went all Flash. Just go straight to Flash. But you can have a drive that tries to blend these two technologies to get the best of both worlds, right? So what am I trying to achieve if I take Flash and put it on the same drive with a traditional spinning medium? Yeah, Kevin.
You're trying to make it faster. The ideal hybrid drive would have all this new Flash drive with the cheap storage capability.
Yeah, so I want the capacity of the HDD, right? I want the price per byte of the HDD. So I want like a terabyte of storage. But I want and remember when I talk about speed, what am I talking about, right? The data transfer speeds are the same, right? What's faster on Flash? The random access, right? And why is that? Why is Flash so fast to do random accesses where drives are so slow? Yeah. There's nothing moving around. Yeah, there's no little thing that's got to like go from point A to point B, right? So okay. So now let's start. And all these questions. I mean, I'm trying to be nice. There's a nice layout here in terms of. So let's talk about some of these, right? So you're going to make a hybrid drive. Here are some of the things you might want to think about, right? And the idea here is that you were asked to implement a file system for this hybrid drive, right? The file system is going to present a unified namespace that's going to locate data on both drives, right? I don't know how these drives are actually managed. I don't know if they have like internal software that does this for you, or if they're presented, but maybe you were being asked to design that internal software, right? So here's one question, right? What file metadata is required to name files and locate their contents? What's one difference from so my traditional inode, I had an inode number, right? And then the inode number, how did I locate the data? What was the inode number leading me to? Yeah, like a data block, right? Where the data blocks are essentially ID'd or named by the drive itself, right? So what complication does this produce right off the bat? Yeah. Yeah, right, one disk might say, hey, I've got a block 0, right? And the other disk might be like, so do I, right? What a coincidence. So I might need a little bit more metadata to figure out where things are, right? Now, for the inode map, this might not be a problem because I can just lay out the inode map covering both disks if that's how I want to do it, right? But for the data blocks, I need some sort of unified block map that either uses some sort of identifier to distinguish between the two drives, or just make sure that both drives don't have any identical block IDs, right? So if drive A has block 0, then drive B cannot have block 0, right? Or I need to actually store, drive A block 0, drive B block 0. Those are my new block IDs, right? So that's just sort of a requirement of getting this to work, right? What about, so a lot of this came down to performance, right? So who has some ideas about how you could improve performance on a system like this, right? By exploiting the different capabilities of the drive. Tom?
You store certain data structures that are frequently accessed. Like when you start up a program, there are certain things that have to happen first. And then there might be like a button that you can press that might be like a different program on the hard drive. And on the SSD, you can put initializations and data structures.
Well, we're moving in an interesting direction here. So in general, what kind of data accesses do I want? Remember, as the system runs, right, some proportion of the accesses are going to go to flash, right, and some are going to go to my traditional spinning disk, right? So Kevin does this like Jeopardy. Like he can already tell what question I'm about to ask, He's like pushing the button. So what in general, what kind of accesses do I want my hard drive to soak up? Yeah.
Well, the first thing I'd probably do is put every single inode file system data structure on the solid state.
Okay, so that's very interesting, right? So we have a proposal to put all the inodes on the solid state drive. Why?
Because it's easier than access, so we have to get them no matter what.
Okay, so they're frequently accessed, right? Those access patterns are probably pretty random, that's true, right? I mean, data, why would inode access patterns be more random than data access patterns? Yeah?
Locality of data.
Yeah, because a lot of files are read like sequentially, right? Or they're read once and then only appended to. There's a lot of structure to file access, right? Whereas inodes, I mean, every inode is its own universe, right? However, does anyone want to argue that I shouldn't put the inode data structures on the SSD? Carl's nodding his head. I should have learned to trust Carl by now. Yeah.
Every access would require us to access two places. One place,
Why?
flash drive and one place, hard drive.
No, someone is saying put all the inodes on the flash drive. There are no inodes on the hard drive. Yeah.
The inode change a lot, so the SSD might not faster.
Okay, the inodes change a lot. The SSD might. So there are wear leveling properties. I don't know if I asked you to think about that. Yeah, I don't think I asked you to worry about that. You don't have to worry about wear leveling flash, as if you thought it was complicated enough. No, but I have a different idea about where the inodes are going to be. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
So like, if we're reading like a lot of data from a hard drive and a lot of data from a flash drive, is there like overhead to the hard drive more so than it's slower to read, or is it actually like linearly growing slower to read?
Wait, linear going slower to read over what?
Like,
what's
if
the
I'm
independent?
reading data, is
Yeah.
that going to be? Am I going to look at the same performance loss as reading, a byte of data from a hard drive versus a flash drive?
Well, okay, but there's two components, right? So there's two components that contribute to the time it takes to retrieve data from a drive, right? Let's say that the files are contiguous on the drive. What are the two parts of the time that we care about for this problem, right? There's two pieces. Yeah, what's one? Yeah, seek. So I have to move, if it's the spinning disk, right? I have to move part of it to the right place, right? And then I can start transferring the data off. So according to the table that you were asked to use in this problem, what are the transfer rates are comparable, right? So this is another good question, right? So for a large file, let's say I can lay out my large files perfectly sequentially, right? That's not true, but whatever. It's true to a certain approximation, right? What dominates the performance of reading a large file? Transfer rate, right? Because the seek time just vanishes, right? The seek time, it's like, oh, okay, fine, you took 10 milliseconds, but reading that 1 terabyte file took 5 minutes anyway, right? So you didn't even notice by the time you were done. What about for small files? Seek time. So there's one heuristic that you might be able to apply in this problem. Right? It's quite simple, which is simply put the big files on the HDD. Right? That's also kind of nice, right? Because what's also true about the HDD relative to the SSD? Yeah. It's bigger. Yeah. So big files go on the big drive. Man, I don't know. I shouldn't be talking about this on camera, right? Because I'm going to go start my company to market this product right after class. Yeah, it's a little simplistic. So, but I want to go back to Vince's suggestion about the inodes, right? So again, who wants to make a counter-argument about where the inodes should go? He's saying put the inodes on the flash drive. Yeah.
I could argue that because you store all the inodes contiguously on the hard drive, that the seek time would be low.
Well, but come on. I mean, the inodes are accessed randomly all the time, right? So even if I put them all in one chunk, right, which would also mean that they would be far away from the data, right? Yeah, but. Well, okay, so this is a good discussion, right? So that's an interesting point, right? The inodes are on one drive and the data's on the other. This sounds bad. Is it bad? No. Actually, it's potentially awesome, right? Because I can be doing data from one drive and inodes from the other, right? In parallel. Let's assume that I can parallelize these operations, right? So I seek one inode, I figure out what the data is, I tell the data drive to go to the data portion, then I go back to the inode drive, and these things can be overlapped. Right, so that's potentially great. I mean, I know this is a weird notion of locality, but remember, we're talking about two drives, so the ideal locality is a little bit different. But I'm going to argue that after a while, most of the inodes are in the what? They're in the cache, right? Inodes fit in the buffer cache very nicely, right? And a lot of times, I don't know what the relative rates are between modifications and reads, but my guess is that a lot of inodes are read way more often than they're modified, right? What inodes in particular probably get read all the time? What's one example?
The ones near the beginning of your address. I mean, near root.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So how about root, right? Root is going to live in the cache, right? In fact, root might just be pulled in there when the file system boots, right? It's used by every absolute path name translation, and it almost never changes, right? I mean, I don't know about you. Maybe you guys put all your files in root for some reason. Hey, they're right there, right? Now that I think about it, that's not such a weird idea to do, especially if it's a single user machine, but that's not typically what people do, right? They're in user programs, whatever, like some sort of subdirectory. So root gets read a lot, right? So, okay, so inodes, I mean, I think that would have been a defensible answer, right? Let's look at some of these other things. So what's another, let's think about large, yeah, Gabriel.
What I'm thinking is put the beginning of every file, like the first to SSD, and then you could read from there. But the data transfer rate is the same.
Right.
So while you're transferring that data, you could be doing the seek on hard drive.
Very clever idea. That's where I was kind of going with that, right? So this is kind of an extension of our idea of putting all the small files on the small drive, right? So now I don't do that. I just put the first n bytes of every file onto the small drive. And so when I start reading that file, if I'm doing a sequential read or a full file read, I grab n bytes from the flash drive. And while that's happening, right, so I get the fast seek time of the flash drive. While that's happening, I'm positioning the heads on the spinning drive. And by the time I get the first bytes from the flash drive, the spinning drive is ready to go, right? That'd be very cool. Any other ideas? I mean, we've come through a lot of the things we talked about. The data transfer rate is usually, great question. I mean, it probably has something to do with the bus that you're connecting the device to the machine with, right? I mean, this is why we keep going like SATA 3, SATA 6, SATA 12, SATA 24. Like more bus speed is really helpful, wider buses. Just the physical transfer rate, right? For the hard drive, it's kind of the rate at which data is actually passing under the heads. For the SSD, I have no idea, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like, I think the SSD is just like memory. There's a bus where you use to get data back and forth, and once that's saturated, you're at that, you're finished, right? They're good questions. Any other questions about this? Yeah, Josh.
If we did Gabriel's idea, how would that work with random access times? We don't want to read the whole file.
random accesses might be bad, right? So another thing that you could, let's see here. Right. So another thing that you could have talked about here is observing access patterns of files, right? So there are some files that are almost always read beginning to end, right? Give me an example of a file like that. Yeah, that's actually true. It's probably true. What else? What's that? Things that are small just get pulled into memory, right? What about big files that are sequentially read and written? What's an example of one of those? Yeah. A movie, an MP3. I guess MP3s aren't big anymore. Back when I was a little computer scientist, they were big, but they're not big anymore. Now you need a movie to be big, right? So yeah, a movie, a video clip, right? Frequently streamed beginning to end. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you guys watch movies differently than I do, but I don't. I mean, sometimes you pause, go get popcorn, but it's usually not watching the movie in a random order, which would actually be kind of interesting to see. I mean, there's those things where they play like, what is it? You play Wizard of Oz with the Pink Floyd soundtrack. How many people have ever done that before? Yeah, so that's awesome. I knew exactly which part of the room was going to raise their hand. You guys should try it. But it would be actually equally interesting to just watch random, 30 seconds of the movie in a random order, right? Maybe that would be awesome.
Can you explain what you watched Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd?
Look it up. Look it up. Trust me, their whole website's devoted to how to do this. You have to queue up Dark Side of the Moon and start it at a particular point in the movie. I'm not making this up. This is true. And then there are people have pages of these weird, eerie coincidences between the music and the movie, right? I think it only works with a certain version of the movie. We could do it on Monday during the exam.
Pretty finishes.
Yeah, exactly. If you guys are all done by 5:30, we'll try. All right. I think I'm almost out of time. So the last thing I want to do today before we wrap up, I want to bring the staff up here. Jinghao, Zihei, ninjas. This is the ninja corner. Scott, Carl, John, come up to the front. I want us to.
They're not done yet.
I know they're not done yet, right? Well, that's the reason why they're coming up here, right? You guys are going to give them a little bit of love to get them through the next week, right? So I don't know where Guru is. I think he's eating lunch. I mean, I think you guys know better than I do how hard these guys have been working all semester to help you guys with the assignments, to help you guys in a variety of different ways. I feel really blessed to have such an awesome course staff, and it's one of the reasons why the class has gone so smoothly this year, to the degree it went smoothly, right, which I think it's going smoothly. It's going smoothly for me, right? I don't know how things are out in the audience. And these guys are the reasons. I'd like to give them a round of applause. Carl even has his button that someone gave him, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you people for the psychotic yawn at the end.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. So anyway, so these guys, will be helping out for the next week, obviously. Hopefully, a couple of you guys will be up here next year if you did well on this course. You're not finished yet. So. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Next year, that's what's going to happen when you get 100 out of 100 on the assignment 3 implementation. It's going to be like, congratulations, you have joined the course staff. please report at this date. Anyway. So again, I really appreciate you guys, all the hard work you've done. Thank you very much. And yeah, so I will see you guys on Monday for the exam. Good luck. Please fill out the course feedback form. If you guys hit 90%, I mean, look, I have other things to do than monitor it repeatedly. Thanks to the person who had the F5, ma'am, I like that. It's not what I'm doing, but if I see it's 90% an hour before the final, I'll release the question. The exam's done. It's going to be printed today. So good luck. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys on Monday for the exam.